Graveyard shift at the Meadow Ridge Toll Plaza was supposed to be easy money. The manuals called it low volume, low stress. My supervisor called it a great place to read. On paper, he was right. Midnight to 6 a.m., 7 lanes, 2 attendants. My booth faced northbound, lane 4. Alicia took lane 2 and kept a tiny radio under her jacket, playing old R&B so soft you could feel it more than hear it. Nights bled together, moths ticking against the glass, a handful of truckers, a couple of commuters with thermoses big as paint cans, the hum of sodium lights turning everything the color of faded mustard. Around 1:58 a.m. that Tuesday, a small car drifted into my lane. An older compact, the kind with square shoulders and a dash that glowed that tired green. The engine sounded like a smoker clearing his throat. None of that was what made me remember it. It was the driver. She was in her late 50s, maybe early 60s. Silver hair pulled into a low ponytail, a practical kind you make without a mirror. Face like someone who had been awake too long, but polite, very, very polite. She rolled the window down, handed me exact cash, and gave me a smile that looked borrowed from a different day. It didn't reach her eyes. They were wet, like she'd been crying and then decided to stop by force. I said, "You okay out there?" The thing you say to fill the air. She nodded, almost apologetically, like I'd caught her doing something private. "Have a good night," she said, voice thin as tissue. She rolled forward. In my side mirror I watched her taillights shrink into 2 red freckles and sink over the rise. Nothing unusual, not really. But some interactions stick like a burr. Hers did. Maybe it was the way her hand trembled when she took her receipt, or how she kept her eyes a fraction to the left of mine, like she was pretending not to look for someone. I shook it off and went back to counting till slips. At 2:49 a.m., Alicia's voice came over the intercom. "You seeing this?" "What?" "Shoulder," she said, breath fogging her glass. "By the maintenance sign." I looked up. At first I saw nothing but road and that fake orange light. Then, left of the lanes, beyond the rumble strip, movement. Someone walking against traffic, hugging the guardrail. A woman. Coat flapping at her calves. "Who the hell?" I started, and then my stomach did a slow, cold turn. Silver ponytail. Same height. Same slow, careful steps, as if each one cost more than the last. She was maybe 50 yards out, head down, shoulders shaking like she was cold, or crying. "She's on foot," I told Alicia. "Call highway." But Alicia didn't reach for the phone. She was staring. "Is that the same lady?" she whispered. I grabbed my flashlight and pushed open the booth door. Night air hit me in the teeth. You don't realize how loud a highway is until you step out into it. The wind drag, the bassy moan of diesel brakes, the insect roar of asphalt. "Ma'am!" I yelled, cupping my mouth. "Are you all right?" She didn't look. Didn't even flinch. She just kept walking, slow and steady, as if the plaza were a hallway she had to cross and we were closed doors she didn't dare open. A set of headlights arced up the lane, a freight truck roaring toward Alicia's window. I waved it toward lane 5 and took 3 steps into the striped median, arm raised, foolish and full of adrenaline. The big rig moved like a building on wheels, blast of air flipping my vest. For a second the truck blocked my view of the shoulder. The trailer took a long time to pass, white walls, rivets like stitches, shuddering, clattering, then finally the tail flicked by and the highway reappeared. She didn't. The shoulder was empty. Guardrail. Reflectors blinking like bored eyes. My beam of light found gravel and wrappers and nothing else. No woman, no coat, no shadow sliding under the rail. My mouth went dry. I scanned the drainage ditch, the access path to the maintenance yard, even the dead space between the booths. Nothing. It was as if the truck had pulled a curtain across the frame and the stage manager had reset the scene while I blinked. By the time I got back into my booth, my hands had the shakes. Alicia was pale. "Did she?" "Gone," I said. She was right there. We didn't say much after that. When you're the person who's supposed to be calm, you learn how to seal panic inside your ribcage. We kept working. We told ourselves maybe she'd double back. Maybe I'd misjudged the distance. Maybe. At 5:58 a.m., daylight thinning the edges of the world, our day shift relief, Daryl, came in with a coffee the color of used motor oil. He looked rough. "You here?" he asked, dumping sugar like a man building a sand trap. "Hear what?" Alicia said. "Wreck out past mile 212. Car left the road, smacked the lighting pole. Happened around 2. He took a sip, grimaced. Female driver. Late 50s. Didn't make it. All 3 of us were quiet at once. I didn't have to ask what she looked like. I already knew. After Daryl drifted to his lane, I pulled up the previous night's footage. We're not crime scene techs, just toll workers, but every booth has a camera with a forever humming hard drive that has seen more yawns than crimes. I scrubbed to 1:58 a.m. There she was, tight shot of her face through my window. She was exactly as I remembered, hair, hands, that brave little smile, and then her taillights sliding into black. I jumped to 2:49, the timestamp burned into my brain. I watched myself stand, grab the flashlight, run into frame. In the upper left, the shoulder stood grainy and bare. No figure. No coat. The truck thundered through, my vest flapped, and then it was just me again, breathing like I'd run a mile. I replayed the clip until the timestamp stopped feeling like time. The feed never showed her on foot. Not once. By the time I got home, the sun had burned the mist off the cul-de-sac and birds were out doing their idiot morning songs. I lay on the couch with my boots still on and saw her smile each time I closed my eyes. That apology stitched into it, that strain around the lids like she was trying not to overflow. Sleep came in pieces. When I woke, the day felt too bright and too thin at once, like cellophane pulled across a lamp. I didn't tell my wife. How do you tell someone a piece of the night followed you to work, paid exact change, and then came walking out of a timeline where she was already gone? I went back in that night anyway. Work is work. The plaza looked the same because of course it did. Concrete doesn't care about your revelations. Even so, I found myself glancing at the shoulder every few minutes, the way you check a burner you know you turned off. Alicia didn't play her radio. Neither of us said we were waiting. We just were. A little after 3, a sedan eased through my lane, and the driver asked if I'd heard about the accident. "It was on the local news," he said. "Horrible thing. Said the woman lived out in Pine Hollow? Teacher, I think. They're asking for witnesses." After he went, I stared at the empty stretch beyond the booth and thought about the first time you realize the world is not a straight road but a weave, threads going forward, backward, sideways, some fraying, some looping in places you cannot see. Maybe what we caught was a loop. Maybe grief makes echoes. Maybe the human body doesn't get the last word about where a person is. I keep a roll of quarters in my pocket now. It's a stupid habit, but it makes me feel prepared, like if a face ever reappears in the glass, polite, tired, trying to keep it together, I'll have exact change for the trip they didn't finish. I'll say, "You're okay." And I'll mean it this time, even if it's a lie, even if it's only for the length of a lane. Lane 4 still hums. Trucks still breathe like dragons. Moths still tap against the glass. And sometimes, when it gets very quiet, I can almost hear footsteps on the shoulder that the camera doesn't know how to see. I've been driving cross-country since my 20s. After enough miles you start to believe you've seen it all. Strange towns, stranger people, and roads that don't make sense. But nothing prepared me for what happened one December night on my way to Montana. The plan was simple: visit my parents for the holidays. 8 hours of driving, mostly on main highways. I've done it dozens of times. But that night, when I checked my GPS, I saw a dotted gray line, an alternate road that cut straight through the backcountry. Supposedly it would save me almost an hour. Dirt road, sure, but I'd driven worse. So I took it. At first, nothing was unusual. The dirt track was bumpy, but the car handled fine. No lights, no signs, just trees pressing in on either side. I watched the map, waiting for it to curve back toward the main highway. Then, just like that, the map stopped showing the road. Only a single blue dot, my position, floating in a blank green wilderness. No signal bars. Nothing. That was my first warning. I should have turned around. But I didn't. After half an hour of jolting over rocks and potholes, I saw a glow ahead. Relief washed over me. A house. Out here. A little farmhouse with a porch light and two people sitting side by side, an older man and woman, both gray-haired, both watching me approach like they'd been waiting. I pulled over and got out. The night air was sharp and cold, but it was more than that. There was a heaviness to it, like the air had been drained of something living. "Evening," I said, walking up. "I think I'm lost. Can you tell me how to get back to the highway? I'm headed to Montana." The man rose slowly to his feet. He wore a plain, one-piece suit, like a mechanic's jumpsuit but cleaner, no logos, no stains. His wife sat rigid in her chair, her eyes never leaving me. The man blinked. "Montana?" he repeated, as if I'd said a word he'd never heard before. "Yes, Montana. North. Big state, lots of mountains." I gave a little laugh, waiting for the punchline, for him to tell me I'd taken the wrong turn. But he didn't laugh. His expression stayed blank. "What is Montana?" he asked again. My stomach nodded. Nobody forgets Montana exists. Nobody asks what it is like it's some alien word. The woman behind him tilted her head. She still hadn't spoken, but I could feel her eyes drilling into me. A song crackled from a radio beside her, an old melody, warped and wrong, something like a funeral march played backward. I swallowed. "Look, maybe you could just point me to the nearest town." "Any town." The man's lips pressed into a line. He turned his head toward the trees, then back at me. "There is no town," he said flatly. Something about the way he said it, like it was a fact of nature, like saying the sky was dark, made me step backward. "Okay," I stammered. "Sorry for bothering you." I jogged back to my car, every hair on my body raised. As I shut the door, I glanced into the rearview mirror. The man hadn't sat down. He was still standing there, watching, motionless. His wife's face was barely visible in the glow, but her lips were curved in the faintest, coldest smile. The music kept playing. Faint, distorted. I floored it down the road, not caring about the ruts and rocks slamming the tires. The glow of that porch faded, swallowed by the dark. Minutes turned into what felt like hours. Then, without warning, the dirt rode smooth beneath my tires. A green highway sign flashed past, "Welcome to Montana." Relief hit me so hard I almost laughed. Civilization. Lines on the road. Gas stations and people who knew what words meant. I didn't tell my parents. How do you explain that you stumbled into some pocket of nowhere, where people don't know the world you're from? They'd think I was sleep-deprived. Maybe I was. But a few mornings later, on my way back, I couldn't resist. I tried to find the shortcut again. Same highway, same markers. I slowed where I thought the dirt road had been. But there was nothing, just a wall of trees and underbrush. No track. No turnoff. No tire marks. Nothing. I checked the GPS. No dotted gray line. No alternate route. It was gone. I know what I saw. I know the jump in my gut when that man asked me, dead serious, "What is Montana?" Some nights I lie awake and wonder if the world we live in really is stitched together with seams. Maybe sometimes you step wrong, and you end up between them, standing on a porch where the people wear the wrong clothes and listen to music from nowhere, asking you questions about places they've never heard of. I just thank God I didn't stay longer. Because when I drove away, in the mirror, the man hadn't moved an inch. He was still standing in the dark, staring after me. And the woman's face, just before the headlights disappeared, was smiling wider. I've never been superstitious. I believe in common sense, bad luck, and people making terrible choices. But not in curses, not in black magic. At least, that's what I thought before the night my wife and I stopped at a roadside diner that shouldn't have existed. We were driving cross-country to visit her family. It was late, past midnight, and the two-lane highway had stretched into an endless ribbon of darkness. My wife, Carla, dozed off in the passenger seat. I was hungry, restless, and starting to feel that uneasy blur between focus and fatigue. Then I saw it, a flickering neon sign just off the road. Food. The word glowed weakly in pale red, some letters burned out, the only glow we'd seen in hours. I slowed the car. Carla stirred, rubbing her eyes. "You want to stop?" she asked. "Just for a snack," I said. "Stay in the car. I'll grab something quick." She nodded, too tired to argue, and curled back into her seat. The place was a squat building with peeling paint and a door that groaned when I pushed it open. The smell hit me instantly, something sour, heavy, and wrong. It wasn't just old grease, it was rancid grease and sulfur, like something that should never be cooked. Inside, a few bulbs buzzed overhead, throwing pale light over empty tables. The jukebox in the corner rattled out a warped, slow tune, like a waltz played underwater. "Hello?" I called. A voice rasped from behind the counter. "What do you need?" I jumped. An old woman was standing there, so still I hadn't noticed her. She must have been in her 70s, her skin paper-thin, her eyes sunk deep and lifeless. She smiled, but it was the kind of smile that feels like a trap. I forced a polite laugh. "Sorry, didn't see you. Just wanted something quick for the road." Her voice was dry as dust. "Bring your wife in. You both should eat." My stomach tightened. "She's asleep in the car. I'll just take something to go." That smile stretched wider. "No," she said. "Bring her in." The way she said it, it wasn't a request. It was a command. I shook my head. "Another time. Thanks." Her eyes narrowed. Her lips twitched like she was about to say something else, something darker. I turned, almost running for the door. The cold night air hit me like a lifeline. The car was right there, and so was Carla, only she wasn't alone. A man, tall and thin, was leaning by her window. His hand rested on the glass, his face hidden in shadow. I sprinted forward, heart hammering. "Hey!" The man stepped back slowly, as if he'd been expecting me. His voice was low, urgent. "You need to leave. Now." Carla sat frozen, staring at him. "What's going on?" she whispered as I opened the door. The man shook his head. "That woman inside, she's not what she looks like. People disappear after stopping here. Don't ask questions. Just drive." His words didn't sound like superstition. They sounded like experience. I didn't wait. I shoved the car into gear, gravel spitting as we pulled onto the highway. In the mirror, I saw the man still standing there, watching the diner fade into the dark. Carla clutched my arm. "What did he mean?" I told her everything. The old woman, the smell, the way she insisted I bring her inside. Carla's face drained of color. We drove in silence, mile after mile, until finally the relief of gas station lights appeared ahead. We pulled in, both of us shaking. Inside, while Carla used the restroom, I asked the cashier casually if he'd heard of a little diner a few miles back. The man frowned. "A diner? Nothing's been out there for years. Closest place is 20 miles east." I insisted I'd just been inside. He gave me a long, wary look. "You should stop talking about it," he said finally. "That land, people say it's cursed. Last owner was an old woman. She was arrested once, accused of witchcraft, of poisoning travelers. But they never proved anything. Then she died, or at least that's what they say. I didn't sleep that night. Even safe in a motel bed, the image of her smile burned in my head. And worse, the sound of her voice telling me, 'Bring her in.' Weeks later, I read an article online. A demolition crew had finally torn down the remains of an abandoned diner outside that very highway. Authorities found human remains buried beneath the floorboards. Old bones. Some recent. I never showed the article to Carla. She doesn't need that memory. But I know the truth. That woman wasn't gone. She was still there, waiting in the dark, still trying to lure someone inside. And if that stranger hadn't warned us, Carla might have followed me in. Sometimes, when I drive at night, I swear I still catch a whiff of sulfur. And I imagine a raspy voice whispering from the dark, "Bring her in." I've always loved driving at night. The roads are empty, the silence feels endless, and the world shrinks down to just the sweep of your headlights. It gives you space to think. But one night, years ago, that silence was broken by something I'll never be able to explain. My wife Lily and I were crossing states to visit friends. It was after midnight, and we had been on the road for hours. Lily had dozed off in the passenger seat. I was running on caffeine and habit, hands steady on the wheel, when I saw something that made my stomach flip. Just ahead, at the bottom of a ditch, a small gray sedan sat half buried in weeds. The hood was smashed, one headlight broken, and the taillights blinked faintly, like a dying heartbeat. I pulled over hard onto the shoulder. "Lily," I said, shaking her awake, "there's been a wreck." She sat up groggily. "Are you sure?" "Look," I pointed. I grabbed my phone and scrambled down into the ditch. The air smelled of gasoline and burned rubber. The car's front end was crumpled, the windshield cracked. "Hello? Is anyone in there?" I shouted. No answer. The driver's seat was empty. Then I heard something behind me, branches cracking, slow steps in the brush. I turned. A woman stumbled out of the trees. She looked maybe mid-30s, her clothes torn, her face streaked with dirt and blood. A cut ran across her forehead. But what struck me most were her eyes, vacant, hollow, like she wasn't entirely there. "Ma'am?" I rushed forward. "Are you hurt? Sit down, I'll call 911. She didn't respond. Just stared through me. Still, she followed when I gestured toward my car. Each step looked painful, but she climbed the slope behind me. Lily gasped when she saw her. "Oh my God!" Lily whispered. "What happened?" "She needs a hospital," I said quickly, helping the woman into the passenger seat. "Hold on." I started the engine. That was when I noticed it, the sudden chill. The summer night had been warm and sticky, but inside the car the air turned sharp and icy. My breath fogged faintly. Lily rubbed her arms. The woman sat stiffly, staring straight ahead. Her hands lay folded in her lap like she was at church. I tried to speak to her. "What's your name? Was that your car? Do you want us to call someone?" No response. Only a faint murmur slipped from her lips, half-formed words too soft to catch. Lily leaned closer, but the sounds were nonsense, broken fragments. The drive felt endless. Every few seconds I glanced at her, expecting her to faint or collapse. But she never moved. Just that dead, forward stare. Finally, blessedly, I saw the glow of a gas station ahead. Relief hit me so hard I almost laughed. I swung in hard and braked. "Stay here," I told Lily, jumping out. I ran inside and blurted to the clerk. "There's been an accident. There's a woman hurt in our car. Call 911. The clerk's eyes widened. He grabbed his phone and followed me outside. But when I yanked open the passenger door, my heart froze. The seat was empty. No woman. No trace she'd ever been there. The door hung slightly ajar, but there were no footsteps in the dust, no movement in the darkness beyond the pumps. Just empty silence. "She was here," I said hoarsely. "I swear to God she was right here." Lily staggered out of the car, pale and shaking. I saw her too. She got in beside me. She was real. The clerk gave us a long, uneasy look. Then he said quietly, "You're not the first ones." He told us about a wreck on that road years ago. A woman, late 30s, driving alone. She lost control on the curve and hit a tree. By the time anyone found her, it was too late. Locals said her spirit still appeared to drivers, wandering the ditch, trying to get home. I didn't want to believe him. But then Lily whispered, "Look!" On the passenger seat, where the woman had been sitting, lay a small silver cross on a broken chain. Old, tarnished, but real. I picked it up. The metal was freezing against my palm. I didn't sleep that night. We checked into a motel, but every time I closed my eyes I saw her face, pale, dirty, her eyes empty as glass. And always that faint, cracked whisper of words that made no sense. Years have passed. I still keep the cross in a drawer at home. Every time I see it, I wonder, what did she want from us? Did she think we could take her where she never managed to go? I no longer drive that stretch of highway at night. Because I know the road isn't empty. And somewhere out there, just beyond the headlights, a passenger is still waiting for a ride she'll never finish. Christmas Eve has a way of sharpening the night. Every light looks lonelier, every shadow deeper, every mile longer than it should be. Samantha had fallen asleep with her knees tucked up and a blanket over her shoulders, her breath fogging the window in slow ghosts. The highway ahead of us was a ribbon of black glass, no houses, no billboards, just mile markers and the occasional crown of pines leaning in like eavesdroppers. The radio played carols so quietly they sounded like a memory. I was thinking about her parents' living room, the scent of cinnamon, the dented angel on the tree, when something pale flickered at the edge of my headlights. I eased off the gas, thinking dear. The shape didn't bound, it didn't move at all. It was a child. A boy stood on the shoulder, toes at the white line, one small hand raised like he was hailing a cab. He couldn't have been more than 7. White t-shirt, shorts, bare knees. In December. The cold cut like a blade when I rolled down my window, and still he didn't shiver. "Samantha," I said, shaking her awake. "There's a kid." She blinked the sleep away, then slapped a hand over her mouth. "Oh my God!" "Pull over." I hit the hazards and eased onto the gravel. Red light washed the boy's face. It didn't change. Not afraid, not relieved. Just that hollow, serious stare kids get when they know no one's coming. Samantha cracked her window. "Sweetheart, are you lost? Are your parents nearby?" No answer. His lips parted as if he might speak, but only a thin, whitish breath drifted out and vanished. Something in me recoiled. He should have been shaking, crying, hungry for help. Instead, he stood like a statue of a child pretending to be alive. "I'm going to talk to him," I said, pushing open my door. That was when a voice cut through the dark behind us. "Don't." The beam of an old tractor swung wide, tires grinding the gravel, engine coughing. An older man sat high in the seat, cap pulled low, a coat that looked as old as the tractor. He lifted one gloved hand, palm out, the universal sign for stop. "Get away from him," he called, not unkindly, but with the flat authority of someone who'd seen too much. I turned back to the shoulder. The boy was gone. Not hiding. Not running. Gone like a switch had flipped. The ditch grass lay unbent. The frost on the white line was unbroken. If I'd imagined him, Samantha had too. Her fingers dug crescents into my sleeve. The tractor rolled to a halt. The old man killed the engine and the sudden quiet rang in my ears. He climbed down carefully, joints protesting, and came around to stand a few feet from me. His eyes were the washed-out blue of winter sky, and they were tired. "You folks aren't from here," he said. "No," I managed. There was a kid." He nodded once, like a doctor acknowledging a symptom he'd expected. "You saw him. Who is he?" Samantha asked, voice small. "Where did he go?" The man took a breath that steamed and then blew away. "Road took him about 10 years back. Family's car broke down on the curve by the old creek bridge. Mama told him stay put. He didn't. Driver never saw him in time." I felt the highway tilt under my feet. Samantha swayed and grabbed my arm. He looked cold. "He always does." The old man's gaze slid past us to the empty shoulder. Sometimes he waves. Sometimes he steps right out. Folks swerve, folks wreck. Best thing you can do is not answer. Don't speak his name. Don't invite him in. A wind moved through the pines, bringing with it the sour tang of bogged water and something like pennies left in rain. The old man jerked his chin toward a narrow track that disappeared into scrub. Come on. You'll understand. Against every sensible nerve in my body, we followed. The tractor's headlight washed the path in a sickly cone. Branches scraped the sides of the car like fingernails as I crept along behind him. After a few minutes the path opened into a little pull-off I never would have noticed from the highway. There, under a bowed cedar, stood a low stone and a weathered angel no taller than my knee. One wing was chipped. Someone had tucked a plastic car at the base, sun-bleached to a ghost of red. The old man stood with his hands in his coat pockets and bowed his head. Samantha stepped closer and traced the carved name with a finger, then the dates. 7 years. Christmas Eve. My throat closed. Sometimes the angel cries, the old man said quietly. I would have thought he meant the way rain runs down stone, until I saw it. Not water. Not dew. Thin black rivulets from the angel's empty eyes, streaking the cheeks, pooling in the hollows like ink. Samantha sucked in a breath and stumbled back, one hand to her mouth. It happens when he's near, the old man added, and it didn't sound like a warning so much as a fact, like ice is cold. I wanted to look away. I couldn't. The night pressed tight enough to hear things you never usually hear, the flecks of the trees, the tick of cooling metal, the small, damp sound of the earth breathing. Somewhere far off, a coyote yipped and went silent. Samantha slipped her hand into mine, and her fingers were bloodless. I tried to help once, the old man said after a long time. First winter after it happened. He was there in the road, same as you saw. I stopped. I spoke. Asked his name. He swallowed hard. He got in my truck, or I thought he did. Seatbelt clicked. Frost bloomed on the inside of the windshield, like breath. Then I pulled into town and the seat was empty, and there on the passenger mat was a little shoe print, wet as a fish. I spent the next month hearing a knock on my back door every night at the same time. You learn not to open to a thing you can't see. We stood there until the tractor's headlight began to dim and flicker, as if even the battery was reluctant to share light with that place. The old man turned and slogged back toward his machine. You go on now, he said. Drive with your brights. Don't stop for anyone until you see a porch light. Back on the highway the world felt wrong-sized, like my car had shrunk and the road had grown. Samantha didn't speak. She stared at the glass where her breath fogged and wiped it away with the edge of the blanket until it fogged again. At the gas station 20 miles on, she stood under the fluorescent hum and shook so hard the coffee in her cup left rings on the counter. The cashier asked if we were okay. I told him we were tired. It was true and not true. For weeks afterward, Samantha lit a candle in the last pew of St. Mary's and let the wax run over her knuckles while she prayed. She didn't ask for anything complicated, just rest for a boy who waved at strangers. She left a toy car at the base of the Nativity one Sunday, and when Father Miguel tried to give it back, she said, "It's not for you." And he didn't argue. Little things happened at home that winter. The porch camera would ping at 2:17 a.m., the time we'd seen him, and show only a blur of motion at child height, a smudge of pale that never resolved. On a morning so cold the breath hung like gauze, I found a single damp print at the edge of our welcome mat, the size of a child's heel, and nothing leading to or away from it. Once, warming the car for Samantha before dawn, I glanced up and saw a fogged oval on the inside of the passenger window with a small arc drawn in it, like a clumsy smile. I wiped it away and told myself it was my own sleeve. I didn't tell her. The next Christmas Eve, we took the long way around, even though it added an hour. Tradition, we told ourselves. Better scenery. We kept the radio low. We didn't look too long at the shoulders. But as we passed the county line I found my fingers drumming the wheel in time with a rhythm I didn't recognize until I did, The faint, steady beat of a little hand tapping glass. People say the South is full of stories. That's true. But some aren't stories at all. Some are weather, the kind that settles into the low places and doesn't burn off when the sun climbs. A boy waiting where the road made a promise and broke it. An old man who learned the hard way what happens when you open the wrong door. A chipped angel that weeps ink. If you ever find yourself on a two-lane in the deep hours and see a small figure raising his hand like he believes in you more than you believe in yourself, drive on. Don't speak. Don't invite. Don't make a space beside you where something that isn't breathing might sit. And if you can't help glancing in the mirror as the shoulder slides by, whisper what Samantha whispers every time we pass across on the roadside. Go home, baby. Then keep going. Keep the wheel straight. Keep your eyes on the place where your headlights end and the dark begins, and pray that tonight the dark stays where it belongs.